Good morning, evening, afternoon. I'm tatocat. Welcome to my channel. Today we are playing Echoes of Lucid9 Fangame. Previously, after all this time, we finally get into the base. We find out Hisao's going to be one of our co-workers, and there's another lady who is our commander, who is an anime fan and also doesn't get to do much, it seems. And most importantly, that Yama is housed there. And Rui hears us so excited, and she rushes, and she only finds what doesn't seem to be Yama. Like, there's machines and everything, like metal, and basically all that's left is his face, kind of. And that's where we left off. As the last visible signs of life within the Bedgerous caves, Vitterius cage. The man in tombs. They move in a syncopated quick step, dancing without pause. No, not dancing. Darting. Trembling, looking for a way out. And then I understand. The moment I do, something dies inside me. Oh, there's a flashing thing. You know what the flashing thing means. Did it do something this time? Okay, this time there weren't any hidden words. Okay. Usually there's like a hidden thing. I feel a weight pressing against my ribcage. A constricting slab of pins and needles that thrums against my stomach and ties my intestines into an excruciating knot. Tiny hairs on the back of my neck stand on end, and as turbulent nerves deliver flashes of heat in rapid succession to every cubic millimeter of my body. And in the back of my mind, I hear the voice of someone in great pain. The voice of a child. It cries, but in agony, uttering two words. He's afraid. I know what I'm seeing, but I still wish I had it wrong. And yet, every time I watched him sleep, every time he was about to wake up from a nightmare, his eyes would move like this. Like they were trying to escape. And I would wish that they could, and that by using their defiant energy as a guiding light, he could as well. But he can't. I have to do something, but what can I do? I did all this because I wanted to see him again. For 3 years, I carried out orders that never should have been given, all for the sake of not losing him. I served the corporation that told me my parents had to die, watched as he lost his mind and got taken away under false charges. Well, this is a cool effect. For this? so he could live the rest of his life as some sleeping exhibit under glass with tubes in his throat, so he could suffer quietly in some living hell. I can't do this anymore. I have to say something, anything, to stop this. Please just tell me why.
We wanted to bring him back as much as you did, Rui. We never promised that he would be the same.
And this is what your idea of bringing him back?
Hayata, you need to understand, they didn't give us much to work with. Concessions had to be made.
Concessions? My legs tremble with a mixture of rage, horror, and revulsion as I take a step forward, gesturing towards the disgusting cage of glass beside me. Look at him! The ground shakes as my foot collides with it, clashing with the metal below, like the blade of a crumbling guillotine. You see the terror in his eyes? He'd be scratching at the glass right now if you hadn't fucking paralyzed him. Or was that just another one of your concessions that had to be made? You know, if you're just planning to screw me over again, you can go right ahead. But if you're planning on involves lying to me like this, at least put in some fucking effort. You really expect me to believe this? You really expected me to believe this trash? That you wanted to bring him back? That you cared about him?
Hayata, if you'll give me a chance to explain the situation.
He's just another one of your test subjects, isn't he? Tell me, Kosuke, am I missing something here? Or is my best friend just a nice, warm slab of meat to you? A human petri dish you can poke and prod whenever the hell you want. One with a nice squishy brain you can pump concentrated fucking terror into.
If you're referring to the visible changes in his physiology, you should know that his internal organs were all intact when we recovered him. I wish I could say the same about his limbs, but the necrosis had already progressed to a point where prosthetic implantation was required. So, you decided to pry open his chest? Rui, you need to calm down.
Never say that to a person. I never understood that. If somebody's freaking out, don't tell them to calm down, because it just pisses them off and makes them worse. I'm gonna guess it's not gonna go well for him. And you need to listen to me right fucking now. You want a civilized fucking
discussion? You better have a good fucking explanation for turning Yama into this. How long has he been like this? We tried saving as much of him as we could. However, the damage was too severe. How long has he been like this? 7 months. That was the that was the earliest DCIS was willing to finalize the custody transfer. At least tell me he still acts like himself. When it's time to wake him up again, that'll be up to you. We left his core memories and personality traits intact, but correcting the damage to his perception of reality and limbic system required a more invasive approach. I told you earlier that I found a way to make people dream, Hayata. Regarding why that was necessary, I suppose I should have been more forthcoming. Yes, you should have. No, I should have been more understanding. I should have just gone along with whatever the hell this shit is. You want to tell me why you did this? Go ahead. Maybe you'll keep flapping your gums. Well, you'll finally have enough hot air to extinguish this dumpster fire. Kosuke nods and turns away, beginning an aimless walk around the room. Oh, we're gonna have to hear one of Kosuke's rants. Then I shall. Let's prepare myself for one of Kosuke's rants. At first, I was simply trying to research a drug that could help people sleep. In retrospect, I could have stopped there, but curiosity got the better of me. It was shortly after the recession in 2028 that I discovered the reality of things. People in Isamu were working too hard to maintain the social order under an imploding world economy. Was it necessary? I don't know. I could never know. What I did know, however, was that people were dying. They had so little time to rest or enjoy themselves that stress built up inside them, causing heart attacks, aneurysms, strokes. Everything that could go wrong did. The worst part was that none of them could stop. However, what if they didn't have to? What if that illusion of a perfect world could be provided to them on an internal level? After some study, I isolated a molecule that I figured would work. I tweaked it slightly. Clinical trial was unrealistic at the time, but I surmised that it could eventually be administered alongside conventional therapy. My wife was alive then. I never told you about her, did I? You know what? That one's on me. Sometimes, even I forget that she was once with us. As reclusive as she was with her research, her foresight was always vastly superior to my own, and I know now that I should have heeded her warning regarding administering the formula by itself. Well, this doesn't look good. As pure as it was, doing so without a stopgap measure led to some unfortunate side effects. The natural state of the human mind is to resist sudden manipulations in perception. By this method, a ground state of reality is discerned. The drug I had developed not only accelerated the neurological repair process of sleep, but broke down this psychological resistance to the arousal. Together, it was the recipe for a true dream, a lucid dream. The problem arose when waking up didn't put an end to it. As I said previously, the mind resists manipulation, even from itself. For this reason, the line between dream and nightmare is quite thin. At times, worrying also. That's where your parents came in, Hayata. They signed a contract that allowed them to serve in the Special Services Division, and in doing so, they became part of something much greater than themselves. A long-standing project, one whose end goal was to produce means of overcoming the confines of our shared psychological reality. When the SSD and I initially began working on this project, we were focused on finding a way to administer this drug in such a manner that its neurodegenerative side effects could be removed from the equation. None of us knew exactly where to start, so I turned to some of the research notes my wife had left me in her will. More specifically, I turned to one of the airtight steel boxes she'd keep locked up in our home office. That was where she told me they were stored, after all. And the things I found inside, Hayata, they were truly glorious. Working digital models of the human brain, accurate to the last neuron, terabytes upon terabytes of data on gene editing, semi-organic brain implants, and most of all, the code she had written. For the first time in human history, she created a piece of software that could seamlessly convert the contents of a human brain its memories, its experiences, its sensations, all into a perfect digital record. After implanting a rather large trial group with modified neural node assemblies, similar to the implants SSD operatives receive today, enough chemical and electrical data was gathered that the behavior of every neuron and neural group in the brain could be represented in this manner. Before long, she had isolated the basic structure of memory, emotion, and sensory input, and her findings hold up to this day. In theory, since the saved neural data was based on both chemical and electrical signals and could be compartmentalized based on the context, it stood to reason that this data could also be transferred to a different person's brain if there were a machine capable of facilitating this transfer. Unfortunately, she passed before she could develop one. However, the groundwork was there, and your parents saw this better than anyone. They came up with the idea to use micrometer scale remotely operated machines to reconfigure malfunctioning neurons, describing the possibilities that such a technique held as virtually unlimited. I was far from supportive of this idea when it was first conceived, but when a consensus formed that such an apparatus could indeed accomplish our primary objective of removing our problem drug side effects, I elected to not intervene. I had little faith that the SSD could accomplish such a feat, but they did so anyway. They developed a microprobe that could be deployed en masse to scan and stabilize malfunctioning neurons in patients that had taken the drug. Admittedly, they were rather primitive when compared to some of the nano swarm abominations Limnescape could conjure at the time, but extremely effective nonetheless. There was just one issue in patients that hadn't taken the drug. The electric and chemical stimulation facilitated by microprobes caused their subconscious minds to try and employ a counterbalance, a correction for correction, if you will. For some, this led to brain damage and cerebral hemorrhaging. Your parents who oversaw the project at that point wanted to start deliberately giving the drug in order to see it in conjunction with these microprobes, disorders such as anxiety, depression, and PTSD could be treated. Since our primary objective was complete, I gave them and their team the go-ahead. Their insistence on using willing test subjects was a bit of an obstacle, but success was still within their grasp, even if their ethical standards were unreasonably high. By 2038, they had succeeded by all possible definitions, and while I did eventually have to let them go, the research your parents spearheaded is now in a position to save countless lives, Yama Ishimoto's included. What you're seeing here is Project Aurora, the first major deployment of the intracranial neural engram program system, or INSEPS. We're calling it INSEPS from here on out. We're never saying that again. In its shortened form. Its network of self-propelled microprobes that attach to neurons, manipulating them to fire in accordance with programmed training or repairing protocol. An internal solution to an internal problem, exactly as it should be. With your parents gone, the Lucid cell has taken up the first mantle of supervising its development and use. And as of today, you've demonstrated that you have what it takes to join the ranks. Before I can allow you to go any further, however, you'll need to swear an oath of service. About fucking time. Was wondering when you finally tossed me the key to the family coffin. You know you're most useful to this corporation alive, Hayata. As long as that remains true, nobody's throwing you into any coffin. Well, that's reassuring. I'm merely explaining the situation to you as it is. Then you agree that the situation is an absolute shit show? In a sense, but for you, none of this shit show, as you've so eloquently put it, involves anything you haven't already consented to in writing. So, you're telling me I'll be giving you permission to kill me again, but louder. You do realize that if I wasn't for the paper you're saying, I'd be absolutely fucking livid right now. If it wasn't for the paper you're saving, I'd be absolutely fucking livid by now. I do. It's a dated formality, but it's one all operatives are obligated to participate in. I hope you'll understand that I can't make an exception in your case. I get it. Just promise me a decent shovels included in the employee benefits. I'll have a hell of a time trying to dig my own grave otherwise. Then I promise you access to a decent shovel. Follow me, please.
Oh, so we're going to get sworn in finally. We get to see Rui take the oath, I assume, in the next episode.